On my 32nd birthday, my sister stood up at dinner and announced she was pregnant with my husband. My parents lit up like this was a victory lap. They expected me to break. Instead, I smiled, lifted my glass, and said, "Congrats, you two deserve each other." Then I pulled out an envelope and shattered their little show. My husband wrapped an arm around my sister's waist like he owned her. She pressed a hand to her flat stomach, soaking up attention. Mom clapped. Dad smirked. My sister leaned toward me and sneered. "We're a real family now, something you could never be." My husband piled on. "She gives me everything you don't." Real love, that was the pattern in my house. She was the golden child. I was the reliable extra. When she won, they celebrated. When I struggled, they acted annoyed. We'd tried for years to have a baby, treatments, bills, disappointment on repeat, and my mom still smiled and said, "Finally, a proper grandchild is coming from the right parents." Dad stared me down and added, "Some women just can't keep a man satisfied." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I stood up. First, I raised my glass. Then I looked at my sister's belly. Next, I reached into my purse for the envelope. After that, I laid the papers down like cards. My husband's grin twitched. My sister's eyes flicked to my parents. And the candles on my cake kept flickering. The first paper was the deed to our house. It wasn't ours. It was mine. Bought months earlier and held in a trust under my maiden name. The second was a bank statement, $2.3 million. The third was my offer letter from Morrison and Associates in Portland, senior partner, $400K salary. While they'd been sneaking around, I'd been documenting. Texts, hotel receipts, photos, a couple videos. I looked at my husband and said, "Enjoy the house tonight. Tomorrow morning, you're homeless." He started stammering about rights, so I slid the prenup forward. He'd signed it. Cheating meant he walked away with nothing. Then I showed the NDA from his job. Morrison and Associates had strict rules about affairs that wreck reputations. I'd already met with Mr. Morrison. I'd already shown him photos of my husband and my sister working late in a conference room. My husband went gray. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I did," I said. "Last week, my sister tried to act smug, so I turned to her. Also, about that pregnancy, I told her I'd hired a private investigator months ago. He didn't just catch her with my husband. He caught her with a pharma rep in Chicago. And he caught her with her married department head at Street Mary's." I dropped one photo on the table. Then I said, "Based on the timeline, you've got 3 possible fathers. You don't even know whose baby that is." My husband snapped toward her. "Is that true?" She couldn't answer. Mom finally found her voice. "Natalie, stop. We're family." I laughed once. Family doesn't cheer while I get humiliated. Then I pulled out one more sheet, a breakdown of what my husband stole from our joint accounts. Hotels, cash withdrawals, jewelry, including a Tiffany charge that showed up in my sister's photos. My dad shifted like he wanted to argue, but he had nothing. I gathered my papers and stood there a second, letting it sink in. "Divorce papers will be waiting," I told my husband. Then I looked at my sister. "And since you love consequences, I filed a complaint with the medical board about you and your boss." My sister's face crumpled. My husband just stared at the deed like it was a coffin lid. My parents looked like they'd been hit by a truck. I walked out and moved to Portland the next week. My phone blew up before I reached the end of the street. Him, her, my mom. I let it all go to voicemail. 6 months later, I had a new house, a new title, and peace. My husband tried living with my sister, but he'd been fired and she was under investigation. Their epic love story turned into constant fighting. The paternity test came back and he wasn't the father. She lost her license and ended up taking a receptionist job at a veterinary clinic. The pharma guy vanished. Her boss got fired. My parents called, but it was all forgive and forget with zero accountability. On my 33rd birthday, I ate dinner alone and toasted my own reflection. Not because I was lonely, because I was finally free. That night my sister called, voice tiny. "I'm sorry." "I know," I said, "but sorry doesn't undo choices." She whispered. I was jealous. I exhaled. "Fix your life without using mine. If you ever want forgiveness, earn it." Then I hung up and went back to my dishes.